Welcome into the Victors Weekly, brought to you by Maize and Blue Review. We're part of the On3 network. Go to on3.com, search Maize and Blue Review. You can get access to all On3 national content, all Rivals high school recruiting content, all Michigan content and intel in our message board community, The Den, where I, senior editor Trevor and McCue, of course, am a avid poster, part of my job, and my partner in crime, who is currently in Australia. He's in Josh's homeland, which is why we missed last week.
A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that Josh Henschke is an Australian person.
Yeah, like lived there till he was like 10. He took a trip this past, I don't remember what month it was now, but he took a trip, got to go down there, see his dad and places where he played footy and went to school and stuff. Really, really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool to drive past the schools and see a completely different sort of field setups, right? You've got the footy ovals, you've got cricket.
Yeah.
Pitches.
I didn't really think about that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's nice. But they also, what else is interesting down here is increasingly there is an American sports creep. So, I went to the grocery store when we first got here, just sort of set things up. And obviously my accent gives me away. And people were saying, I played American football in high school. I said, what do you mean in high school? Like the high schools down here now have interscholastic American football leagues, 11 on 11 between public high schools. They've got baseball teams. They've got,
but they're all punters is the problem.
Well, that's the other thing is that was my presumption. I said, so this guy, he wanted to go to a junior college in California to get, a college scholarship and a professional path in American football. And I said, you must be a punter. He said, no, I'm a slot receiver. So American hegemony and American soft power is still alive in the sporting world.
I love it. It's probably a good thing we weren't able to go last week. Post USC, which was bad, and we can get into that because I think we tend to like to not only connect dots but also talk about things we've previously talked about. We're not a hot take show and then we move on, right? So trying to be in some sort of linear fashion about things that we've thought in the past. Do we still think those, or what has evolved, what has changed as the season goes on? And obviously there was a eye test change and maybe something more systematic that we can get into as well. But I think the more important part is what is tangible, sustainable, and not a mirage of a week by week basis, right? Because Michigan goes on the road again against Michigan State this week, a team that I think we know historically other than the 2023 game, maybe with the 49-0, where these games end up being close. Michigan State does a good job of getting up for the Michigan game and making them competitive. And we've seen Michigan lose these games when they shouldn't, right? So it's not something to just be written off. Can also kind of talk about how much I hate this week, and I have some strong opinions about that as well. But let's start with I think you phrased this well in some of our pre-show notes, just which Michigan, right? I've talked a lot about Michigan's identity, Sharon Moore's identity as well, in terms of him as the head coach of this program and what Michigan football is or will be. And I don't know if are we seeing the correction to what, I mean, it's obviously what Moore wanted it to be and thinks it should be in the second half of Washington, but is that Michigan now, or again, is this still which Michigan will we get kind of thing?
Right. When I ask myself which Michigan, it's the Jekyll and Hyde, or the two guys on the shoulder are, sort of complementary looking stats, the yards per play, the EPA, it's all rosy enough to sort of look like a win, but then the final score, right? You can call it old school counting stats. You can try and lean into the metrics as more predictive, but there has been a mismatch between some of the rosy looking stuff and the scoreboard. And so if we go all the way back to the Wisconsin game, this is where this conversation sort of began. Which Michigan? Because that was, again, a really comprehensive sort of three-phase victory, but it wasn't a cover. Michigan offense scored 24 points, gave up 10 points, right? So the other half of the question, which Michigan? That's one where you put together good plays and good drives, and they just end on one wrong thing. So against Washington, there was a fourth down that wasn't converted. Against again, back to Wisconsin, there were a missed field goal. Little things at the end of drives that are otherwise successful in terms of play-by-play outcomes. So the other half is like, is there going to be a Michigan game where all of the rosy stuff does add up and there is simply a scoring explosion? And it would be really, really great timing for Michigan if that came this weekend against Michigan State. Michigan State has played 4 Power 4 opponents and has given up a minimum of 38 points in each of those games. See, Michigan State sort of has the opposite problem where there's pieces, there are, a lot of ball knowers and a lot of high school coaches really admire their defensive coordinator, Joe Rossi. But at the end of the day, they are giving up buckets of points. And so it's really, it's a matchup of two teams that you'd like to say from the Michigan perspective are heading in opposite directions. But to me, it's the ultimate question this weekend is which Michigan? Is it going to be the Michigan that can put together drives but not finish them and keep Michigan State in the game till the very end? Or is this the week that sort of the symphony really gets its final drummer, right? And it really concludes the piece, and it takes the 7 yards per play, or it takes the 450 yards, and it turns it into 35 plus points. So that's the ultimate question, because we saw the which Michigan question get answered in the negative versus USC. But the good news coming out of that is it didn't destroy the season. It didn't ruin the season. There were these sort of freaky rumors in the aftermath of a bad locker room, or these two guys got in a fight, whatever. But to Michigan's credit and Sharon Moore's credit, the Washington game didn't play out that way. That could have gone a lot worse. That was a 5-1 team coming in. Unfortunately for Washington, in the second half, they had the super time zone curse bite them on the behind, had 3 turnovers. But, the title of this episode is Michigan Takes a Step Forward. And they did that against Washington. They bounced back from USC. And now the matchup with Michigan State is the which Michigan question, because Michigan State is going to let you as the opponent determine which team you're going to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And I'm actually glad you brought that up, because that's something I've kind of struggled with this season, which is there are teams that go into a game plan and say, okay, what are we good at? What are we great at? What's advantageous for us? Where are there opportunities on our opponent? And how can we exploit that and win a football game, right? And what the model, when you talk about like the Harbaugh era, right, and Michigan football, like Joel Klatt kept talking about that in his show after the game and even during the game, that like this looks like a Michigan football win. Like everybody knows what that means when you say it, right?
Yeah, in the past 12 years, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that identity exists, but part of that is going into a game and believing that we can play our style of play regardless of your opponent, Mr. Opponent, your strengths, weaknesses. We're going to just play the way we want to play. And in the end, we will win because we will play cleaner football. We'll have less penalties. Our run game is sustainable and efficient and will eventually wear you down. Our depth will pay you off, blah, 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 right? That formula. And in 2023, it worked. because your formula included 5th and 6th year players, thanks to the COVID exemption, because of a group of players that felt this unfinished business and came back in 23 and otherwise would have stayed, because you utilized NIL in a way to get far above roster numbers, right? Everyone's like, man, they have so much depth. It's like they have 2 starting lineups. Well, yeah, they had 170 kids on that team, right? And of course, these veteran players are less likely to be penalized, blah, 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 blah. So that formula is tough to duplicate. And that's kind of what I think a lot of people says. It feels like Sharon's trying to win the Michigan way, but you're not dominating in the trenches. You're committing penalties, or you're making the mistakes. You're missing tackles. You're definitely not getting penalties called for you, right? The other way. Michigan's still dead last in college football for opponent penalties called, which, I mean, crazy. Somebody has to be dead last, I guess, but it's just kind of shocking, right? So in this game, Washington, I mean, USC first, I guess, you see a team in USC that was willing to maybe play differently to beat you, right? They saw what you were doing and they're like, okay, we're going to exploit that, because USC could have come in and chucked the ball deep and gone for explosive plays all day, and they didn't do that, right? And they lose the running back just like you do. And then you have these Michigan victories where it's like, yeah, you won, but to your point, like, Wisconsin wasn't as much as we thought it should be, right? Nebraska, you're still like, oh my gosh, we're talking about the mistakes that were made. And even Washington, as great as that second half was, we're bringing up the comparisons to Indiana last year. Like, maybe this is the moment. You bring up too, like, we're still looking at these not finishing drives, like the yards per play, not necessarily translating. So now that you're going to East Lansing and it's another road game, while all I care about is winning, and we can talk about this, especially with this rivalry, like win and go home, I don't care. There is a part of you that's like, man, can you just dominate this team one time?
Right.
Blow out the team like you're supposed to. Don't win by 10. Don't make us say, yeah, that was a good win, but like, what was left out there, right? And if I'm looking for something to grab onto that makes me think that might happen, the offensive line play, Blake Frazier obviously steps in for Evan Link, plays really well, grows in the middle of the game. You see him go from a bull rush, just solid. But you saw, I mean, we've talked about this, the meanness, the violence in the offensive line, like owning the trenches. You see that in the Washington game on the defensive side as well. Derek Moore had himself a ball game. And yeah, those rumors that you bring up involve the most veteran player on this team, somebody we've said is the heart of this team, being held out for disciplinary reasons, right? And these pointing fingers and that kind of stuff in the locker room, like, yeah, after a loss, a locker room's going to be ugly. How do you respond? And it feels like they've responded, and the team was more unified, and they played for Sharon. Everybody made fun of him for the jacket, the, you know, blue collar with your name, the going to work, like what a gimmick it is. And whether it's corny or not, he was able to go to the podium Monday and say, oh, I guess it worked, right? Like, I got my players to play for me, right? So that's that wave of optimism that this is a step forward, the name of the show, and not a step back. But like, there is a real likelihood of maybe not a step back. I mean, a loss is steps back. Who knows what the conversation is there? But if it's another flat road performance where they just don't look energized and they don't win by enough, or it's too close or whatever, we're still just, I don't know what the rates are. We treading here? Like what last year,
I think
best 8-5 year ever. And this is like, man, we're 5-2 and blah.
Yeah. I do think that the back half of the schedule sort of sets up well for Michigan to address this, or to rise to this challenge, in the sense that there are 3 games remaining that are really good candidates for that warm bowl of soup feeling, like completion of a performance. Northwestern is ahead of schedule. Northwestern's a pretty good team. That's going to be a road game in, I believe, Wrigley Field, right? That's not in their little makeshift home stadium. So that you got to get up for that. Yeah, because people are actually extremely charmed by that. It was not supposed to be a permanent solution, but it's like it ended up being a beautiful little stadium.
Yeah,
but it's not going to be there. That's an opportunity. Maryland on the road. Michigan has a lot of recruiting relationships in the DMV. Maryland has been a pretty spicy team this year. That's always a good game. It's the week before Ohio State. And then this week, of course, is a rivalry game. So the record doesn't matter. If you're going to feel fired up for any opponent, it's going to be Michigan State. So there's really only one game remaining, which is Purdue, which you could excuse a flatness, right, competitively. I think if Michigan had down the stretch opponents like Purdue, Rutgers, that would be a little bit of that'll be a little bit scary, to be honest. Not that you'd lose the games, but just that you'd be hitting more potholes. I think that there's really no scenario where Michigan should feel flat for this game, right?
Right.
It's a road game only in the fact that it's not literally in your stadium, but it's 50 miles away. This is a short drive. There's no body clock adjustment, right? You're going to have support in the stands from Michigan fans who are making a very short trip. And I just think that the which Michigan question is really going to be answered definitively, perhaps as soon as this weekend, and I guess the one other thing I'd say about this weekend specifically is I don't want to call it a luck factor or a superstition factor, but I do think it's very fortunate for Michigan that the line is as large as it is, because you can fall well short of a cover in this game and still win by 2 possessions, right? It opened at 12.5. It's all the way up to 14.5 now. So you could win by 2 touchdowns and still not cover. And you want this to be, if you're Sharon Moore, or if you are Bryce Underwood, or if you're a Michigan coach or fan, of course you want this to be the game where it all comes together and you win by 35 points. But even if it's not, this game never goes like that. And if you can get out of there with a 10-point win, that's going to be one of those pass-fail tests that you just pass. I understand Michigan State is not good. Their fan base is extremely unhappy. Jonathan Smith is not. He doesn't seem to have the fire in his belly that the program needs. But from the Michigan perspective, the way this series goes, you simply don't care. So this is like a get the win and check in next week on the completion of that which Michigan question. It could be this week. I just don't want to stake anything on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It could very well be that Bryce Underwood throws for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns this weekend. But in this series, you just can't anticipate that. So that's the only thing. I think the back half of the schedule sets up well to address this question. We'll see if it's this week or check in next week. But you're going to play the kind of opponents that are going to be good for this young Michigan team, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you remember coming out of the Nebraska game, people were obviously upset with some of the things. I remember even going into it, people were like, oh, this game's the biggest. I forgot. I did this last time too. I can't remember the right word, but it was this big indicator in the show.
A referendum. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so hilarious. He's not even on the sideline for it. And we came out of it and it was the next day I'm like, hey, relative expectations. Michigan's 3-1, 1-0 in the Big Ten. Their loss to Oklahoma is now to, at the time, a Heisman front runner,
right,
and the best defense in the country. I'm not mad. Right. So with this Michigan State game, as much as I want the blowout, the statement, whatever, because of the fact it is Michigan State and all of these other everything that surrounds this rivalry. I hate this game now. And I hate that I hate it, but I do. The discourse around the tunnel and how that is somehow even people I would consider reasonable, rational Michigan State people that I know on Twitter have accepted this narrative that it was Michigan's fault. That Kahari Crump, who has now been indefinitely suspended again for attacking a
from
player
his new team. Yeah.
Was somehow left no choice
right.
but to assault Jamon Green with a helmet. Like, it's just crazy. And I've had in the past, like right after it happened, I had a conversation with Michigan State fans where it's like, hey, I can agree with you that what Taylor Lewan did during the rivalry was stupid and the steak was stupid. And Devin Bush kicking the logo, even though I think maybe your reaction to it was a bit much, stupid. And he got clotheslined before, whatever. This rivalry is filled with both teams doing stupid things. For me, the tunnel was like this new line that had been crossed, right? And now it's like every game you go into like, oh, what's going to happen next? I made the mistake of tweeting right before the game ended last year, like, hey, I think Sharon Moore and Jonathan Smith, to their credit, who have tried to turn down the rhetoric, hey, they did a good job. And then obviously Loveland gets in a Scott. I don't remember who it was with. He gets pushed after.
Oh yeah, Loveland and the Mullings Phantom Stomp,
right?
Which was
so.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I just have to say about that. I think it's probably a very healthy thing that Alan Haller is gone for Michigan State because he accelerated that Mullings moment, right? Like I believe he pursued some sort of he demanded a suspension of Kalel Mullings from the Big Ten League office, who basically laughed him out of the room.
They were so bitter from what had happened the year before, and they knew in the moment because it was on video that they had to show accountability. And then retrospective after that decided they were really pissed off that they got pinned with this. And Tom Izzo and his comments around it too. And that's why, I think in recent years now, you've seen them kind of flip this narrative on it. And that was their opportunity to be like, oh my God, look what Michigan did, so.
I'll just say, since he's not there, since it's sort of a harmless bullet to fire, I'll just say that Alan Haller was particularly toxic for the rivalry. I think that he did not fulfill the role of an athletic director. He was
never an athletic.
He was a message board poster.
He was Mark Hollis's right-hand man. He was working at the head of the police department when all of these things that were terrible were happening in the federal report. How they hired him and it wasn't a bigger wait, what, is crazy to me. Absolutely.
It's good that he's gone. They made a terrific hire. Jay Bott is a great fantastic athletic director. I think, I mean, I don't know if the writing is on the wall for Jonathan Smith this year or next year, but I'm sure he's going to make a great hire when that time comes. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think that part of it's such an interesting dynamic for this too, because when Smith was hired, I thought it was a better hire than I expected them to make in that cycle. Now, granted, Oregon State's in limbo. They just lost their conference.
Right. He had to go. Yeah,
he had to go. If he had waited a little bit, he's probably at UCLA or Washington instead of Michigan State, right? But a good hire. And in a moment where you just had a coach whose personality was bigger than your program, and obviously the end of his tenure is controversial and still going on, by the way. They're still pending lawsuits.
Still being adjudicated, yeah.
Right. So he was this calm, hey, okay. And they give him a 6-year deal. And I remember telling folks hey, I think this is a good hire actually, but it's going to take time because your NIL structure is gone. It's completely non-existent. Literally, they stopped paying players in the middle of the season. Right. So this accountability,
the SD4L, yeah.
Yeah, so this accountability that they're holding to him now, this is unacceptable. I don't know what people expected. We said at the beginning of the year, you basically have a MAC roster. On defense, I agree. I'm actually surprised. I thought, looking into this game, it's man, I would have thought the defense would have been stronger. And obviously you have Aiden Childs and Nick Marsh on the offensive end, but it's weird that the defense, regardless of roster, that was something I thought maybe would be better. But now, you're coming into this game and he's basically coaching for his job, they say. If he wins, he probably gets another year. If he loses, he might be fired Sunday. And I'm okay, and then what? Right? What?
Yeah, I've thought about that. We on this show, we structurally, we talk about the 4 outcomes to a game, right? Big win, close win, big loss, small loss. And
this is actually a really good point.
I think
what you just said, I'm sorry for interrupting you. but there is kind of a change in his own body language, which I think is fair for fans. It doesn't feel like he wants to be there, does it?
Look, I can't speak for the guy, but
yeah, fair enough.
This is a new environment. College football never used to have in-season firings, never. And we just had 2 at extremely high-profile programs, right? Deshaun Foster got fired 4 games in. James Franklin at Penn State after 12 seasons, 4 games in, whatever it was, and Billy Napier at Florida. And so, Smith could be part of that new environment. Yeah, I again, these are Twitter and board rumor type things, but in the case of like Jed Fish at Washington, it's reported that his wife, Jed Fish's wife, hates Seattle and has already moved back to Arizona. All of her social media posts emanate from Arizona. She's not in Seattle. And so he's a front runner for the UCLA job just for family reasons, essentially. Like people can say that University of Washington football is a more prestigious and more historically powerful football program than UCLA, and that's all true. But people I've always been
these are real human beings and have families, right?
Like, well, that's the thing is I have always been a guy who doesn't care about fit or doesn't subscribe to fit. I think that to your earlier point, Jonathan Smith was a way better hire than I thought Alan Haller on his way out could make.
Yeah.
Having to backfill a coach who you had to fire for a weird reason and scrambling for a coach, and you got a guy. But I think in hindsight, it's clearer now that Jonathan Smith was looking for any rope to pull him out of Oregon State. And I might have to eat crow on the fit thing, because it's his temperament and his recruiting footprint and just the way that program is operating right now. Because like you and I said earlier, Joe Rossi, for example, is a good defensive coordinator. People who know football really, really admire Joe Rossi, and he has had a great career prior to the stop. And here he comes, and Michigan State's defense is an abject failure this year. And it's weird. Jonathan Smith has never put out a product like this. Joe Rossi has never put out a product like this. And these guys are humans. And I think, to your point, if they're not feeling it the way that Luke Fickell's not feeling it up at Wisconsin, you can see how quickly stuff like that snowballs. This is the new environment of college football where all these guys are making money. They need to get paid. You need to fundraise. You need a budget for your semi-professional players. And if things aren't in lockstep logistically and emotionally, it falls apart a lot more quickly than it used to. I think that we talk about this new world of parity, and there's more parity at the top, but there's also more parity at the bottom. Like it's a lot easier than it used to be to just collapse, because you can't keep your guys. You can't sort of rope your malcontents back in.
Well, you don't have a guaranteed 5 to 6 wins on your schedule anymore, right?
Yeah.
Northwestern can be good. UCLA can be good. Vanderbilt can beat LSU and Alabama, right? Like that. You're right. That the parity isn't just like, oh, there's a lot more teams in contention for the playoffs. It's wow. Like we're seeing these kind of games. The AP top 25 is irrelevant, partly because the reporters are stupid that are doing it. But because it's just evolving so quickly, right?
Yeah.
I remember when Smith got hired and I talked about the Midwest thing and everybody kind of downplayed it. And I'm like, as somebody who was an Army brat and moved a ton, okay, like you don't realize. I mean, you're in Australia right now, right? So you understand the culture shift globally, right? But even regionally in this country, like this is a big country.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Like moving between states is similar to traveling around Europe, right? So going from the Pacific Northwest to Michigan, and you're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. You don't understand, like literally every gas station is different. Every grocery store is different. the dialects, the foods, like it's a complete culture shock for a person and a family that like you don't understand these comforts that you have, right? There's some national chains or whatever that are everywhere, but like there's a lot of these little things that you're like, man, you're just not happy, especially if you're somebody who's lived in a place forever or whatever. But
well, look, most successful college football coaches are crazy, right? They're insane people.
So true. Yes.
The work ethic, the hours. And I think there's two ways to sort of ingratiate yourself and to fit in and to slide in. One is if you are not a psycho alpha, you have to be part of the fingerprint of that community, right? You have to know it like the back of your hand. In the other direction, so Curt Cignetti, for example. Curt Cignetti is a 65-year-old Italian Catholic from Pittsburgh. He is not from Bloomington, but he is so psycho alpha that he can shape the program in his image, not vice versa. Jonathan Smith is both an outsider regionally, culturally, and he's also not the psycho alpha who's just going to rebuild the program in his image, right? He is, from everything that I've heard about people who interact with him, he's a polite guy, he's soft-spoken, and really what he likes to do is, draw plays in the sand. Like he likes to sort of cook up new plays for cool young quarterbacks. And that's great. That was the kind of temperament and output that matched Oregon State. And I understand he had to go because the program was literally orphaned. But, hindsight's 2020.
And now he might go back.
I think that would be kind of a happy ending. Trent Bray was his defensive coordinator. When Jonathan Smith left Oregon State, they promoted Trent Bray to head coach. Sort of the West Virginia Bill Stewart feel-good story. Trent Bray was just fired, another midseason firing at 0-7. And yeah, I think that if, again, this is all online stuff, but supposedly UCLA had their eyes on Jonathan Smith, and then they beat Michigan State so badly that they don't want him anymore.
Right.
So, a reunion I think wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I think Oregon State has found a little bit more sort of conference affiliation footing. They can't pay as much as Michigan State could pay, but at least you'd be back home.
Yeah, that loss reshapes things because otherwise, I absolutely could see him at UCLA. Mm-hmm. He's from Pasadena, right? Mm-hmm. And then Washington, like people forget, he was Chris Peterson's offensive coordinator at Washington. Like,
yeah, he's a bright guy. He's a sharp guy. He's just not, if you're going to go to the Big Ten middle class, you have to be such a dynamic personality. You look at the difference in results between Smith and Fickle and then a guy like Cignetti. Now, Cignetti's a unicorn. It's not like there's a dozen Cignettis.
No, but you could even throw in a PJ Fleck who is able to do, to Andrew's point,
exactly.
Really nailed it. Perfect at Minnesota. And I think Michigan State has come to a point where like they're willing to accept who they are and what they want. And when they talk about D'Antonio era, and us, obviously, Michigan people are going to say that was the anomaly, not the standard, blah, blah, blah. But like it proves what you could be, right? And that was somebody who turned up the volume, right? But he comes from Ohio State as a defensive coordinator. He already hates Michigan. He knows his program has to be built on hating Michigan. Head coach at Cincinnati and able to recruit Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky. Like it really was kind of a perfect formula for them. And ironically, I think Michigan State thought that was Luke Fickell. Right. Ohio State guy, head coach since it seemed like the duplication. And then you hear like his wife doesn't even want to go there or whatever. And now he bombs out at Wisconsin. I don't want this to be about Michigan State's head coach the entire time, so I'm going to morph in a second. But somebody brought up on the Hilton podcast, I was like, I don't know who the next guy is. I actually think Chris Creighton would be a great hire from Eastern. And somebody said Golesh. And I was like, that's probably it.
Golesh? Alex Golesh?
Yeah, former Ohio State guy.
Oh, is he? Oh, I see. I didn't know he had that.
Oh, yeah.
I think of him as, I know his life story. He's a Russian-born guy. So
yes, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Into American football, but
okay. Florida might try to hire him. Florida might try to hire him if they miss out on Lane, but
Brandon in the comments saying Brian Hartline. That would also be, I think.
That's probably a good one too. But yeah, no, he went to Ohio State and was a SA there for a little bit, Toledo, Illinois kind of background. But anyway.
Okay, so pivoting into actual football, Michigan State football.
Well,
here's the
hold on real quick.
You go ahead. Okay.
The last head coach narrative, because we kind of thought, and I've seen some articles this week too, that are trying to put that same type of, I don't know if it's pressure, narrative, whatever term it is that exists around the optics of Jonathan Smith on Sherrone Moore. And I would argue, aside from a loss, right? Like that, the post loss is obviously a different world, but like, I don't think this game for Sherrone Moore is big of a inflection point now, because Washington went well and people would be accept, just get in, get out with a win, whatever. But also you did a really good job of rambling this off last time. But the one shield Sherrone has at this point is that he hasn't lost to Michigan State and Ohio State yet. Obviously still needs to play them. That he beat, Michigan State, Ohio State, USC, Bama, and
right. All these first. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So like that, a loss to Michigan State, aside from the fact that like they're trying to fire their head coach and they're down bad, and like how bad that loss would be, it starts to put cracks in this foundation of at least you do blank, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, okay, go ahead, football.
Okay, so this year's Michigan State football team is quite comprehensively bad, despite, as we've said a couple times already, like we like Joe Rossi. I think Joe Rossi's going to land somewhere.
If Michigan would have hired him,
it would be really funny if Joe Rossi were the next Michigan defensive coordinator and he was good.
I would be fine. Seriously, I like his scheme.
But I think specifically what has to happen for Michigan to feel comfortable is the Michigan front four defensively has to do its own thing, because the Michigan State rush offense is really one of the worst I've ever seen. And I think realistically, the over-under on like rush yards conceded by the Michigan defense to the Michigan State rush offense, it should be like 40.
Yeah.
I think they're averaging about 90 yards per game against Power 4 opponents on the ground, which again in college is if you're under 100 yards on the ground, it's unbelievably bad. Obviously in college, sacks are part of the rushing statistic.
Correct.
So the more sacks you take, the lower your rushing yards go. But I'm saying you need to sack Childs enough, keep him from scrambling and running downfield, and bottle up Mekhi Frazier. If you want this to be comfortable, you really have to turn the Michigan State ground game into a pumpkin. The only thing, if you look at the wheels of efficiency, right? So there's an offense and a defensive pie charts for this, so we can throw it up at some point. But really, the only thing Michigan State has going for it on either side of the ball long-term in sort of a high volume of output is explosive passing offensive plays. That's the only thing it does well. It can't run for short yardage. It can't run explosively. They get sacked a lot. Their offensive line is a turnstile, especially with Stanton Ramil out. And so to me, the metronome of this game is the Michigan front four. I want you to talk a little bit about what you heard structurally in the Michigan locker room defensively following the USC game about more of the collaborative effort, because Michigan has the number 5 best non-blitz pressure rate in the country. Michigan is top 5 nationally at getting pressure on the quarterback without blitzing, and yet Michigan is the most blitz-prone defense in the country. So they are tending to do something which is not necessary. And I'm saying against Michigan State, all I want you to do is send 4 and let everybody else just do their job and hold their zones.
And I'm going to defend Wink on something briefly, which is that the categorization of blitz, you just hit on it. To me, it's sending more than 4. That's a blitz. The way it's charted, however, is a non-defensive lineman rushing the passer. So when you see Michigan with what was the game? There was a game where it was like, oh, they got 100% pressure on non-blitz passing downs. Everyone's like, wow, that's amazing. And it was only 2 downs. Weren't charted as a blitz, because if a edge defender drops into coverage and he's replaced with a defensive back, safety, linebacker not lined up on the line, is Central Michigan. Thank you, Juju. And you're sending 4, but one of them is somebody not in a pass rush, lineup. That's considered a blitz. And that's something Wink always pushes back on, is like, if we're dropping somebody into coverage, like we're still sending 4, that's not a blitz. That's not a blitz. However, if you want to argue the semantics of that, sure. But my point last year, he made a comment in a press conference that felt very direct to myself and Seth. There was something specific he said that we had written about that week. But I'm able to show data that Mason Graham on the edge 7 times on 3rd down was not good, right? Because you can say like, hey, I'm still only bringing 4. It's not a blitz. But it is different than a regular pass rush, because you are taking either a Derek Moore or a TJ Guy or a Jayshawn Barham, whose strength is pass rush, and you're putting them into coverage, and you're replacing them with a defender whose strength is coverage and bringing them in pass rush. You've made a decision to swap strengths and weaknesses to confuse the quarterback, right? And what we would argue is, who cares? Yeah. Like, oh, you tricked them. They don't care. Those exotic looks don't fool anyone anymore. This multiple front defense, everybody does it, right? The Ravens scheme was like, remember when spread first came out and Rich Rod was like running quarterbacks and running? Oh my gosh. Wow, this is crazy. Like, everybody does these 6 people standing on the line and you don't know who's coming or going, right? So often a quarterback is literally just throwing it where the blitz was, because now there's an empty area in that zone and they're just targeting it. That's what USC did to pick you apart. In the second half against Washington, we see Jimmy Rolder actually playing zone and reading the quarterback and getting interception. Cole Sullivan doing the same thing. And it's like, hey, Wink has made this change. It's like last year, whatever. And there's frustrations and lots of reports that, to your point, coming out of the USC game. Sharon and Wink got into it at one point on the sideline. And then inside Schembechler Hall, these tough conversations. And Sharon, to his point again, if you want to bring up a change about Harbaugh, Sharon is much more candid. And I appreciate that as somebody who covers the team. Like, he's not scared to say, like, here's some things that happened this week. Josh and I were hearing,
he brought it up. Yeah, he said
he brought it up. These conversations had it.
Yeah.
And it impacted players as well. As like I said, some players literally didn't play in the game because of the way they handled things. And that was a decision you made. And I think that was, if your criticism on Moore is, a player's coach is always seen as a good thing when you're winning. When you're losing, you're trying to be their friend and not their coach, right? It's so tough to find that balance. Somebody else brought up in the comments too, like it looked more active, engaged, and fired up, whatever you want to use on the sideline in the Washington game. I think some of that's literally whatever the TV shows you. I mean, it's one thing if you're in the stadium, but sometimes you're reacting to the 30 seconds of TV broadcasts you get. But anyway, look, Josh and I were getting intel throughout the week. We don't post every rumor we hear. And also this felt like something I just didn't want to get into with the drama around the coaches. And then leading into Friday and then the game itself, it was hard to ignore. And then when you get so many sources from different avenues and confirming things, it is what it is, right? So the exact specifics of it, I don't know. But I do know that the defense has moved to what has been called a more collaborative approach. And that Lamar Morgan, as defensive backs coach, pass game coordinator, and a former defensive coordinator himself, has had arguably a bigger role in the game plan and implementing it. I've got, again, not soap opera drama, guys. I have a former player at practice on Friday telling me that he's seeing Morgan installing these portions and doing this role, right? It's happening. Now, is Wink fired and Lamar Morgan has become defensive coordinator midseason? No, that is an extreme overreaction to what we were saying. The collaborative approach thing is nothing new to Michigan. 2021, Josh Gaddis,
good example.
This was, Nick, you can speak to this. I was telling folks, this was before I started here. I was just kind of getting my feet wet with intel sources, whatever. I was telling folks, like, look, Josh Gaddis is not going to be back next year. And he wins the Broyles Award. I'm like, he is not going to be back next year. Jim will try to get him a head coaching gig because that looks good. Jim never loved firing people. He loved them moving on to better opportunities, right? And he ended up leaving for a lateral move to Miami. But so much of that offense was Sharon Moore's fingerprints all over the run game, Mike Hart all over the run game. And I think all you're seeing now is, hey, there has clearly been coverage issues. And we need other eyes and another voice to maybe impact some of those coverage issues. And I don't know all of the specifics, but whether you want to believe or not, like, your eyes can tell you what you saw on Saturday. And there's another alternative too, where, like, you could say, no, Wink just figured it out. Okay, why did this happen again? Why did last year it take players coming to you and saying this stubbornness and you need to do this and that, and he makes the change, and so much of the confidence into this year was, okay, he figured it out in the back half of the second year, here we go. And now you kind of do the same thing again to start this year. Okay, I won't do it again. Like, how many times does it, like, have to relearn the lesson, right? So look, I don't know, somebody says, I think Wink's gone at the year. Lamar, I don't think Lamar's straight up promoted at the end of the year. There's no reason speculating on any of this. He could be a go DC and somebody comes in. Wink obviously would be very interested in jumping back to the NFL. I don't know. That's going to happen when it happens. But this year, I think Sharon Moore has said, I don't want to lose football games running into a wall doing the same thing over and over again. It's insanity. So much of the Jesse Minter success, Nick, was bend, don't break. It wasn't this elaborate, creative anything. It was just, I'm going to take away your big plays. I'm going to minimize what you can do. I'll let you get yards between the 20s. You're a really good offense. I don't care, but you're not going to score on me. And it's kind of been the exact opposite. And Michigan's offense has been the exact opposite, which you brought up. And I'll show this kind of briefly. I think I want to see this change over the next couple weeks. We came into this year and we're like, look, if the Michigan defense is what we think it can be, and even if it's only top 10, and the offense has to improve from this incredibly low 4 that we saw in 2024, 9-3, 10-2 is very much on the table. And in a way, I think the offense in some areas has improved far greater than I expected it to. But in other ways, it hasn't, right? Like, I didn't think we were going to have field goal kicking issues.
Right.
I didn't think they'd be as poor in the red zone as they've been. The emergence of Andrew Marsh is a great thing. Justice Haynes, how important his explosiveness has been when there and when missing is clear. If you told me Evan Link, Giovanni El-Hadi at one point, Brady Norton, who had become like the starting guard, like the injuries that they've had on the offensive line, I don't know if I felt better about it than I do today. But I've been very pro Frazier and very pro Garnera and Sprague and the young guys in general. So whatever. But, like, their offense, in terms of efficiency, which I like efficiency so much more. What are you doing against opponents? No garbage time. They're top 30. In 2023, they were like top 5, and people didn't understand it. They were boring, but they were efficient. They got points every time they got the ball, right? They're top 30. That's sufficient for me. But the defense is 18th. And you would think that would be better, but they're allowing points when you wouldn't expect them to. So in this game, against this MSU defense, I want to see the offense. Ideally, again, I'm happy getting all the win. But where am I really happy? The offense is still explosive, whether Justice Haynes is out there or not. There's explosive plays. They're converting in the red zone. And the defense isn't giving up these 3rd and 14s. They're playing, I don't want to say playing safe. That's not the right word, is it? Like what? I want to see the defense just go out there and say, look, we don't need, it's 3rd and 14. I'm not going to blitz Brandon Hillman and Jair Hill and have
yourself a 9 yards and punt,
Yeah, I'll take it, bro. I'll take it.
So this is going to be a sub 1 hour episode for me over here, but I have two things. Number one is Michigan State's injury situation is really unaffordable, right? They're not deep. They do have some good starters, but Stanton Ramil, their left tackle, genuinely good. He's been missing time. He's been hurt. And as a result, the offensive line has been a complete disaster. I mean, he is a cornerstone left tackle. You can sort of build your pass protection sets around him. He's been missing. Is he back yet? I don't know. The way Smith talks is just, he's a very sort of bland speaker. And so you never know. I mean, he might be in street clothes. He might not even warm up. He might be back to LT1. We'll see. Nikai Martinez is another example. I honestly couldn't tell you the name of his backup. He's been out. And
that's a safety that replaced.
That's right. That's right. He's just an unaffordable loss back there. So I think a lot of the talk about like how comfortable or uncomfortable this game will be, it could matter who's able to suit up and who's not. Although I've made this mistake before on this show so many times, said, the USC defensive line is thin.
Yep.
Didn't matter. Oklahoma shuffled its offensive line. Didn't matter. So who cares? But here's a really like slippery one. On Sunday morning, are we going to be asking each other which wide receiver named Marsh is actually better?
I mean, that'd be amazing, right? I talked about this on Hail to the podcast. Andrew Marsh has somehow actually been better than, like, as exciting as people are about him. What he's done in the last 2 games projected over a season would be might be the best freshman year wide receivers ever had. Like,
I think Andrew Marsh
unbelievably good the last couple of games.
I think true freshman Andrew Marsh is better than true freshman Mario Manningham. I think true freshman Andrew Marsh is Michigan's wide receiver 1, and that's not even a demerit on Donovan McCulley. Donovan McCulley
can just do more.
He just is.
Yeah,
he's a him. He is a himothy. And I'm so glad I like
Nick Marsh. I like Nick Marsh so much, and I would be very happy if he was wearing maize and blue next year.
He never will. He never
will. But my God,
you might see him at Tennessee, but you'll never see him in Ann Arbor, unless it's on the opponent's sideline. No, here's another. I'm so glad about this, because this is important. We talk about green flags, red flags, yellow flags. Major green flag for Steve Kasula.
Did you say red?
Green.
Oh, I was like, what?
Steve Kasula. Okay, I think you can't say anything better about a coach than he has his room ready. What is the expression? You stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Okay? We heard Friday night pregame before the Washington game. This is going to be a big showcase for Michigan's tight ends. Then Sunday morning, both Marlon Klein and Hogan Hansen are injured, not even dressed. Like, Klein was on the report as out. Hansen wasn't even on the report, but he couldn't play. Okay? So, wait, what happened to these reports? We're going to feature our tight ends, but our top 2 tight ends are missing? Yeah, that's right. We're going to get 8 targets to Zach Marshall, and he's going to be amazing. And then we're going to thread the needle downfield to Deacon Tonelli, like basically his first targets of his career, right? Zach Marshall's played a little bit at tight end, mostly special teams. Deacon Tonelli has played exclusively special teams, if that. Your tight ends 3 and 4 in a gotta have it game against a 5-1 Big Ten team. Like this was not some sort of like special treat, pat on the head reward for upperclassmen against Ball State. This was an important high leverage game. The game was tied until late in the third quarter, and you're lasering targets downfield to Zach Marshall and Deacon Tonelli because Steve Kasula had them ready physically, mentally, whatever. And I'm at the point that was enough of a sample size for me to say like I'm good with the tight ends. Like Klein, Hansen, take your time. If you're back, great. If you're not, like I don't like Zach Marshall looked awesome, truly awesome. And I think you cannot say enough about what a positive reflection that is on Steve Kasula, that he had his whole room stay ready. So they didn't have to get ready. There was no choke. There was no jitters. I mean, I guess Tonelli had sort of a drop, but it was actually like a 3-part perfect play. It was a perfect pass, a perfect catch and run, and then unfortunately just a perfect punch out by the DB, and they ruled it incomplete. But basically, every play, almost every target, I think it was like 11 targets combined.
It was
that went to the tight ends was successful, well designed, well executed.
Right.
I think that probably my biggest positive takeaway from the Washington game was actually the absolute pleasant surprise of the tight end room depth. I was so impressed.
It's just a continuation of a theme this year, though, which has been either young players, typically young players. We've talked about the freshmen, whatever, or what you would consider new players via transfer, or players not with a ton of experience, right? Maybe they've been here for a few years, but they haven't played a ton, right? But continually they're coming in and executing next man up or doing even better, right? Like Jordan Marshall fills in for Haynes last week. I mean, we're not shocked we saw him do it against Bama, but like we're talking about Andrew Marsh on the offensive line. We're talking about Guarnera. We're talking about Frazier on the defensive end, the progress that Roller has taken, the Cole Sullivan, the secondary. I mean, literally 4 or 5 freshmen are consistently out there, but what everyone's exceeding expectations from this youth. And that necessarily hasn't always been the case with maybe some of the older, more experienced players. It's been a theme this year, and it's interesting. 23 Tails chipping in. Thank you. Did not have to do that. But not speaking on win or losses, this team would be hard to beat with better special team and less blitzing. Offense is going to be up and down with the youth. And I think, again, when I go back to, I know you got to wrap up here quick. When I go back to my expectations of a 9-3 or a 10-2, the Ohio State game probably determining your playoff spot. Mm-hmm. Michigan continue, with a freshman quarterback and so much youth and all these new starters and new OC, like largely, I think Michigan has been, what I thought they would be, or progressed in the way that I thought. It's been, you're missing 14 tackles against USC. Your punting is this inconsistent. We're so bad at punt returns, like we're literally not letting Samaj catch a punt. Right? Like back to this original thing about winning Michigan football by playing the Michigan football. What you can only, the idea that like we're so good at fundamentals, we're going to beat you in over 60 minutes. Well, you're not. You're not stronger every single time. You're not deeper. You're not the more disciplined team. So you got to win with where you're better or more creative, or by exploiting the other team's weaknesses. Don't stubbornly show up and just be like, and I think that's been my frustration from a game plan standpoint is it doesn't feel like we went into the USC game planned for USC. It felt like we went into that game saying, we're going to do what we want and it's going to be good enough. And Lincoln Riley's not going to outcoach me. Mm-hmm. And he did. You got outcoached.
Skunked. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned in passing Ohio State. So I think I'll part with this because it's interesting. Michigan's going on the road to East Lansing to play a pretty bad Michigan State defense. You would hope and expect Michigan's going to put up yards, if not points. This weekend, the same weekend, Ohio State is hosting Penn State. Now, Penn State is obviously a wreck, but the Penn State defense is nevertheless 19th nationally in defensive yards per play. As we sit here right now, Michigan and Ohio State offenses are less than 100 yards apart on the season, right? You think of Ohio State as clearly the best team in the country. Maybe they are. Matt Patricia has done a way better job on that defense than any of us expected. But their offense
I don't know
has
if I've
not
ever
been
been more wrong about something.
I know, clearly.
Crazy.
But their offense, it's interesting to think it could be Sunday morning in America, which I don't know, it's Wednesday night for me. But it could be Sunday morning in America. And statistically, over the season, the Michigan offense is actually better than the Ohio State offense. You're talking about a redshirt sophomore, Julian Sayin, plenty of time in the system, 5-star quarterback. Their entire offensive line has been healthy all season. They've got the 2 best wide receivers in the nation. They've got a running back stable. And yet, Michigan, with its true freshman quarterback, it's gone on the road to play Oklahoma. It's included in those stats. It's got a wide receiver room that everybody's criticized. It's down to its 3rd and 4th tight ends, 3rd string offensive line. That can be something to hang your hat on as you prepare for that game and you look down at the end of the road. If you've got an offense, and remember, Michigan overall is the youngest roster in the entire Big Ten. If you've got an offense that is, you know, pound for pound or yard for yard, whatever, up there with number 1 Ohio State in the country, then that's what you can lean on to give yourself a chance as you prepare with some of these manageable games, right? The manageable games that Michigan has the rest of this regular season to prep for that Ohio State game, where the opponent has enough of a pulse and the game has enough juice where you can't overlook it. You got to bring your A game, but you can get through that schedule, get through that gauntlet, hopefully healthy. And I think that opportunity to really start, you know, if you're 2 drag racers and you're looking out your driver's side window at Ohio State, and you're both these 2 teams trying to get to that end of the season, like this weekend is when you start putting your foot on the gas, right? This is the opportunity to answer, which Michigan are you going to be?
And then what in the world?
Peace out.
What is that?
Oh, that's my. You don't know this? This is Big Boutros.
Oh my God.
That's my guy. He's been that's since I was 16 years old. That's been my profile picture.
Excellent. All right, so
but that's what I have to say, man.
I love it.
The
4 outcomes, we need the Michigan blowout. If it's the close Michigan win, I don't want to sit here and feel like I'm making excuses and hedging again, like I have so often this year. Like, yeah, it wasn't this, but here's why. You know, just do it. I'm already hedging because I honestly, part of me literally doesn't care. I hate this game so
in my
much.
gut,
there's nothing
for
Michigan to gain from it.
This is an interesting head versus heart disagreement, because usually it's the other way around. But because of the nature of this series, I just want to get out of there. Do you know 100%. What I mean?
Yep, that's where I'm at.
But my head says,
yes,
this defense has yielded way too much for you to just say like, okay, 24-13 is fine. Like that would be kind of bad. Just from if you change the uniforms, right? If this is Team A versus Team B, and you're not thinking about the nature of the rivalry, and Team A is what it is and Team B is what it is, and it's like 24-13, that's like, that's not, you know, in my gut, I just want to get out of there, but you don't want to be the offense. You don't want to be the offense to break that sort of 30. You don't want to come in under, be the first team to not hit that 38-point mark. So we'll see. We'll see.
Well, you also don't want to be the defense that lets Aiden Childs cook either. Like
True. Exactly.
Or lets them run for a ton of yards on you.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I brought up 23, and I know there was so much going on because that's the week that Stallions breaks and Michigan State talks about canceling the game for player safety and all this nonsense. And they're bringing their quarterback to the sideline, which they gave up that stunt after a little bit. But Michigan just came in and beat the crap out of them, 49-0. Like that type of a statement. But at that point, that team felt like everything they had accomplished for the last 3 years was being called into question, and they had something to prove. So is your program being called into question right now? Are you going to continue to play for your head coach? Because big win here. And again, getting to the bye and then the couple weeks, you should be 9-2 when you play Ohio State. And ideally you look good doing it. Right. Every win this year, we've kind of been like, except for Central, it's been like, So, all right, we'll see what we talk about next week, Wednesday.
Let's see. All right.
Which piece of land are you going to be on at that point?
I'm going to be in Australia for quite some time.
Okay. We'll make it work. Thank you for doing time.
No, likewise. This works well. So we'll see you next time.
All right, folks. Remember
to subscribe,
notification bell on the YouTube channel for when we go live, and we'll see you next week.